Most of you already know this by now, but if you don't, let me spell it out clearly. I was blocked by Ryan Reynolds, yes. The same Ryan Reynolds that the internet loves to crown as the king of self-deprecating humor. The wisecracking Deadpool with the perfectly timed tweets. The charming family man married to Blake Lively. The Hollywood couple so curated that their Instagram banter gets more headlines than actual film releases. But behind that glossy veneer lies a storm that has cracked open into one of the messiest, most publicized cultural takedowns in recent memory. And what makes it extraordinary is not just the scandal itself, but who has now entered the arena to blow the lid off of it. Joe Rogan, the godfather of podcasting. The man with the biggest microphone on the planet, who has now gone on record, unapologetically and with zero hesitation, to side with Justin Baldoni, a man once painted as Hollywood's resident nice guy and family man, now pushed into the villain's seat by two of Hollywood's most powerful A-listers, only for Rogan to stomp onto the stage and say enough. Enough of the fabricated narratives, enough of the weaponized accusations, enough of the glossy PR spins meant to disguise a power grab as a crusade for justice. Because when Rogan speaks, it is not a whisper, not a subtle nudge. It is a megaphone blast that reverberates across millions. 14.5 million Spotify listeners, 16.4 million YouTube subscribers, 18.9 million Instagram followers. A man who turned the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial into a cultural conversation that exposed media bias and double standards. A man who has the reach to shift perception overnight. And when he points his finger directly at Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, accusing them of trying to destroy Justin Baldoni's life, career, health, and reputation under the guise of social justice, it stops being gossip and becomes a cultural indictment, a public takedown that no amount of PR spin can drown out. Because Rogan didn't mince words, he didn't tiptoe around the issue. He flat out accused them of weaponizing the Me Too movement not to protect victims, but to seize control of a movie franchise. A franchise Baldoni owned, a passion project he nurtured. Only to watch two Hollywood power players allegedly attempt to hijack it under the cover of feminism and victimhood, which Rogan rightfully framed as absurd, manipulative, and disgraceful, likening it to some twisted Ocean's 14, the entitled heist, a spectacle where A-listers play roles of moral authority while secretly pulling strings to advance their own power. And what makes this story explode even further is the presence of receipts. Real receipts, not vague insinuations or carefully worded statements, but texts, voice notes, screenshots, a full-blown website launched by Baldoni that shreds the carefully crafted Lively Reynolds narrative. The most damning of which involves Blake accusing Baldoni of barging into her trailer while she was breastfeeding, playing the "he violated my space" card, when in reality the receipts show that she explicitly texted him to come in, that she invited him. Written proof, undeniable, in black and white. An invitation turned into an accusation, the kind of staged clownery that Rogan spotlighted with disgust, practically mocking the audacity of thinking such a flimsy fabrication could hold up in the age of receipts. And in that moment, the narrative flipped. The carefully protected sheen of Blake and Ryan as Hollywood's golden couple cracked wide open, revealing a darker, more cynical game of control and reputation management. And it didn't stop there because Ryan Reynolds himself became a prime target of Rogan's blunt force honesty. The once beloved Deadpool now rebranded as Dead Wrong, a man who built his empire on being relatable, funny, and authentic, now exposed as a key player in what Rogan calls a deliberate smear campaign. So much so that Rogan laughed at the idea that Ryan could wiggle out of it, telling him directly, "You are a key part of this. This is what you get." Dismissing his attempts to backpedal out of a $400 million lawsuit as nothing more than empty scrambling. Because you don't accidentally land in that kind of legal inferno like you tripped over a gin bottle from your own aviation gin brand. You end up there by being complicit, by pulling strings, by playing puppet master with someone else's career. And the irony is brutal. Ryan's entire persona, Deadpool, Mint Mobile, Aviation Gin, the charming husband persona, now looks flimsy, like an avocado toast brand propped up by PR teams, a hollow act collapsing under the weight of accusations. Memes sprouting across the internet dubbing him Blockpool for blocking critics while pretending to be the relatable everyman. And Blake's role is no less damning. Because Rogan cast her not as the feminist icon she has tried to project, but as a manipulator playing Cruella de Vil behind the scenes, orchestrating power grabs while crying wolf to the media. A double standard on full display. Blake cries, the media rallies, Baldoni produces receipts, and he's doubted, at least until now, until Rogan turned his megaphone on the hypocrisy and said no more. No more of Hollywood elites hiding behind NDAs and legal threats. No more of the media covering for the golden couple while demonizing the calm, decent man who dared to stand his ground. And in many ways, Rogan framed Baldoni as the new Johnny Depp. Another man vilified until receipts forced the truth into daylight. And just as Depp had the courage to fight back against Amber Heard's narrative, Baldoni now emerges as the unlikely warrior, a calm man forced into battle, armed with hard proof that has flipped the script, leaving Ryan and Blake scrambling as their house of cards collapses. Their empire of PR-crafted perfection crumbling into a circus watched by millions. Because this is bigger than gossip. This is about how movements meant to protect victims get hijacked for power. How double standards poison Hollywood. How the truth can only be suppressed until the receipts force it into the open. And Rogan's role in amplifying it makes the fallout seismic. A turning point where even Hollywood royalty like Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are no longer untouchable. No longer shielded by charm and curated relatability. Because when the godfather of podcasting says you messed up, the world listens. And now the internet echoes with his blunt assessment. They coined up, and this is what they get. They expected Justin Baldoni to roll over, retreat quietly, and vanish from the spotlight the way so many Hollywood targets do once the machine turns against them. But not this time. Instead of hiding, Baldoni showed up with a war chest, hundreds of texts, voice memos, behind-the-scenes footage, and even a dedicated website. Because who launches a full website in the middle of a lawsuit unless he knows he's been set up and is prepared to torch the lies in public? Joe Rogan recognized this instantly, framing it not as some messy he said, she said, tabloid spat, but as a rare she said. He pulled the receipts case, where the documented evidence obliterates the Hollywood spin. The beauty of it was how unprepared Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds seemed to be. They assumed their A-list shine and PR armor made them untouchable, but Rogan nailed the truth. Facts don't care about magazine covers or Vanity Fair spreads. For years, nobody dared expose them with receipts, out of fear of their status until Baldoni broke the silence. And suddenly Hollywood's so-called prom king and queen were scrambling, blocking critics, silencing accounts, and watching their own fans rip them apart online for hypocrisy. Ryan Reynolds even blocked me. Yes, Deadpool himself, or Blockpool now, without warning. I don't know if it was when I shared on X the disturbing allegations involving his daughter and the Deadpool franchise, or when I simply refused to play along with his self-aware marketing charm. Meanwhile, Baldoni wasn't just clapping back on Twitter. He was firing a full-scale legal cannon, dropping a staggering $400 million lawsuit. Yes, not $40 million, but $400 million aimed directly at Blake, Ryan, and their PR fixer, Leslie Sloan. This wasn't petty revenge. It was an industry earthquake. The trio thought they were playing 4D chess, weaponizing sympathy and pulling strings behind the scenes. Instead, Baldoni showed up with the rulebook, the proof, and a strategy that turned what they expected to be a quiet burial into a catastrophic legal and reputational disaster. His lawsuit reads like a checklist of Hollywood sins: defamation, extortion, false light, invasion of privacy, promissory fraud, every dirty trick suddenly dragged into the light. This wasn't some flimsy "you hurt my feelings" case. It was scorched earth litigation. Even Rogan, who doesn't hand out praise lightly, admitted Baldoni's legal strategy was solid, which is saying a lot coming from a guy who mocks most things that come his way. And then came the shocker. Baldoni also named the New York Times, suing the paper of record for its lopsided, fawning coverage of Blake and Ryan, a move that exposed just how far media bias had gone. If journalism wasn't already on life support, Baldoni just shoved the shovel into its grave. His approach was simple. No backroom deals, no hush money settlements, just full transparency. Every slimy little detail dragged into the daylight, every accusation countered with documentation, every attempt at spin burned down by proof. It's a gamble that could change Hollywood forever. No more unverified accusations destroying reputations. No more PR juggernauts burying the truth. No more believe first, question never narratives turning into weapons. If this lawsuit lands, and the evidence suggests it could, it won't just rattle a few stars, it will fracture the very system that protected them. And that brings us to Blake Lively's behavior on set, which went far beyond a diva's tantrum and into cartoon villain territory. Multiple reports allege she essentially staged a hostile takeover of It Ends With Us, firing crew members, replacing people at will, blocking Baldoni, the actual director, from accessing his own footage, and claiming producer authority as if she were helming a Marvel tentpole instead of a romance drama. A composer later said she personally called him to declare, "I'm running the film now." A line straight out of a parody but delivered in total seriousness. Meanwhile, she was filing harassment claims as if she were a helpless victim on set, when in reality she was pulling the strings, signing off on edits, and dictating casting. That isn't the posture of a powerless actress. That's the behavior of a boss, a mob figure in heels. Add Ryan Reynolds into the mix, and it becomes impossible to believe he was some clueless bystander. By all accounts, he was a key player, allegedly defaming Baldoni to industry contacts, pressuring agencies like WME to drop him, and backing Blake's power play from start to finish. And his silence now screams louder than any Mint Mobile ad. If he truly disagreed, where was his statement of support for Baldoni? Where was any attempt at accountability? Nowhere, because he wasn't just watching, he was participating. Rogan's disgust cut through the noise, pointing to the ugliest part of this saga, the way Blake and Ryan twisted feminism into a weapon. Rogan made it clear he wasn't dismissing genuine victims or claiming all accusations are fake. Instead, he highlighted the hypocrisy of selective outrage, the way the world freezes when Blake cries foul, but falls silent when receipts prove her claims are fabricated. The media swallowed her narrative whole, running with it without even minimal fact-checking, while Baldoni was out here dropping screenshots, recordings, and footage, yet somehow still treated with suspicion. The imbalance was glaring, and Rogan's platform magnified it. What's worse is how Blake and Ryan's version of feminism resembled a warped, performative caricature of the real movement. Believe all women, no matter the facts. A convenient, hashtag-driven gimmick that elevated them as saints while simultaneously destroying a man with lies. Even longtime feminists have started recoiling, stepping back to say, hold on, this isn't empowerment. This is manipulation. And with every new receipt, every new contradiction exposed, the tide shifts further in Baldoni's favor, showing the world that what looked like a noble fight was nothing more than a Hollywood power grab, dressed up in hashtags and magazine spreads. Even feminists who have fought for real justice will admit you can't just believe someone simply because they make an accusation, especially when hard evidence shows the claims are stitched together out of exaggerations, fabrications, and outright lies. And then when you see the level of control Blake Lively allegedly seized over the movie, it becomes even harder to understand how any reporter could still write headlines painting her as the powerless victim. The only explanation is that some in the press aren't doing journalism at all. They're running PR copy to curry favor. That's why figures like Joe Rogan, Dave Neal, and Andy Senior are suddenly being branded misogynists for the simple crime of asking questions. Think about that for a second. When did journalism morph into misogyny? And when did fact-checking turn into hate speech? The answer is, it didn't. It's just the shield celebrities like Blake and Ryan now use to discredit anyone who challenges their curated image. Doubt Blake's story and you're instantly labeled the enemy. This isn't about gender anymore. It's about monopoly of image and power. And from the looks of it, Blake and Ryan are determined to hoard both, aggressively silencing dissent online to the point that content creators are being attacked simply for not believing Blake's version of events. That's not empowerment. It's weaponized career assassination, with Blake pulling the trigger and Ryan quietly wiping down the fingerprints. What they did was hijack a movement designed to protect survivors and twist it into a Hollywood ego trip, where their pain is performative and their claims are currency. But now that the backlash is finally boiling over, they seem shocked anyone would dare push back. They never expected Rogan to call their bluff. They never thought Baldoni would fight back with receipts, or that the internet would flood with screenshots and voice memos. Their entire playbook was, trust me, I'm famous. And when that tactic collapsed, the golden couple's carefully scripted PR facade began to crumble in real time. Show's over, Ryan Reynolds. Enjoy the applause while you can, because cancel culture is sprinting your way, and this time you can't charm your way out of it. Reynolds has fumbled the bag so catastrophically that it's almost historic, flipping from beloved fan favorite to full-blown Hollywood villain faster than even the Depp Heard implosion. Fans who once lined up for Deadpool merch, Mint Mobile ads, and aviation gin promotions are now dumping him like a bad stock. Comic shop owners, Reddit communities, and die-hard Deadpool superfans are burning the same posters they once worshipped, burying them in basements like radioactive waste. Imagine being so fake that people who spent a decade idolizing your anti-hero suddenly can't stand to see your face. That's the fall Reynolds engineered for himself by co-signing Blake's tactics and trying to bulldoze another man's career under false pretenses. And the backlash isn't just snark from random trolls, it's his own loyal base. The ones who loved his funny guy with a heart of gold persona, now calling him a hypocritical, power-drunk Hollywood manipulator who hides behind sarcasm and PR spin. One fan summed it up perfectly online. Cool rocks? You and your wife, however, are complete garbage humans. Brutal? Yes, but also accurate. Even Reynolds' money machines are shaking. Mint Mobile, Aviation Gin, the brands that practically exist as extensions of his personality, are suddenly silent, ducking PR questions and pretending the storm doesn't exist. But that silence is telling. If your business is built on your face, and your face is now a liability, the problem isn't the haters, it's you. As one creator perfectly put it, everything they tried to do to Baldoni is now happening to them. That's not just poetic irony. It's karma with a front row seat and a bucket of popcorn. Blake and Ryan tried to bury Baldoni with lies, thinking the media would roll out the red carpet to cover it. Instead, Rogan bulldozed in, flipped the script, and now the internet is gleefully watching Blake and Ryan choke on the very poison they served. But here's where the story gets even messier, because Blake's own legal gymnastics might come back to obliterate her case. She filed harassment claims under California law, presenting herself as a fragile contractor bullied on set. But the receipts tell a different story. Behind the curtain, she was allegedly acting like the boss, seizing a PGA producer credit, firing staff, swapping out whole departments, and even blocking Baldoni from accessing his own footage. That doesn't sound like a powerless actress. It sounds like someone running a hostile takeover. California law does protect contractors from harassment, yes, but Blake wasn't acting like a contractor. She was allegedly operating like an employer, calling the shots, telling the crew she was running the film, and even firing the composer she personally recruited when Taylor Swift allegedly wanted someone else. How do you play both victim and dictator at once? That's the legal paradox at the heart of this mess. Rogan and other analysts nailed the obvious point. If Blake was controlling access to footage, determining personnel, and holding producer-level authority, then she had more power than Baldoni, the director himself. Which raises the ugly question, who was harassing who? From this angle, it looks a lot less like a case of harassment and a lot more like Blake weaponizing victimhood to cover up the fact that she was running the set like a personal fiefdom. And if a judge decides her producer credit, call logs, and email chains prove she acted as an employer, then her whole harassment claim collapses under its own weight. Instead of a brave actress standing up for herself, she becomes a powerful executive trying to muzzle the man she pushed aside. That's not empowerment, it's corporate gaslighting in stilettos. And this is exactly where Rogan blew the roof off. His podcast didn't just cover the story, it detonated it, blasting Baldoni's receipts to millions of listeners who normally couldn't care less about Hollywood drama. These weren't just gossip junkies, they were average guys, dads, gym rats, hunters, truckers, regular Americans who usually scroll past entertainment scandals. Now they know the names. Now they've seen the receipts. And with one podcast episode, Rogan torched the glossy PR fantasy Blake and Ryan had been polishing for years. While they were busy staging their next Vanity Fair photo shoot, Rogan cut straight to the texts, the proof, the voice memos, the lies. And in that moment, the public narrative flipped. Just like Depp versus Heard, the victim turned out to be the manipulator, and the supposed villain emerged as the one holding the truth. Justin Baldoni, the quiet, steady, nice guy director, suddenly looks like the fighter swinging for truth. Meanwhile, Blake and Ryan, once the untouchable golden couple, are being exposed as PR-obsessed manipulators running a smear campaign in matching designer outfits. And the ripple effect is seismic. Baldoni's courage, anchored by documented evidence, is giving other men, long afraid of being crushed by false allegations, the backbone to speak up. It's as if someone finally popped Hollywood's inflated balloon of lies, and now the air is rushing out. For Blake and Ryan, this isn't just bad press. It's the beginning of a downfall. Because in a city built on illusion, once the truth pierces through, the entire tower comes crashing down. This isn't lightweight celebrity gossip anymore. It's a full public takedown. And Rogan has already lit the fuse.